This is the Field of 68. I'm Vince Wolfram.
I'm Jojo Cavanagh in Auburn, Alabama. And this
is Straight Out the Jungle.
Welcome back to Straight Out the Jungle. My name is Vince Wolfram.
I'm Jojo Cavanagh. We are ready for our second recap episode of the season. Auburn defeats Houston.
This was a game for the ages. Twitter was popping. Social medias were popping saying this is a preview of what a March basketball game would look like. Number 4 Cougars, number 11 Tigers in Houston, not at Houston. And it was a thriller.
Yeah, I think every single basketball personality on social media was like, this is a game for the ages. This is a game that looks like it was in March. So it was absolutely crazy watching it on TV. Just this team is going to be so much fun to watch. It was a crazy game.
Yeah, they're so exciting. And even the matchup with it being Houston, it was 2 top tier teams. The last time they played was 2 years ago in March in the tournament, second round of 32. And Houston outlasted Auburn in a game that could have been decided by free throws. And Houston came out on top, ending Auburn's season. But
we'll talk about those free throws later.
Yeah, but this time it was a little different. On Friday, as the team traveled from Auburn to Houston, there was reported by Field of 68's own Jeff Goodman an incident on the Auburn plane involving what we later found out was Janai Howard and Jaheim Hudson. A little scuffle caused the plane to turn around, drop those 2 players off back in Auburn, basically saying they're not going to play in the game against Houston. And then later Friday evening, the team flew back to Houston, but it was a big deal online. There was a lot of commotion around what had happened on the team jet. We don't really have any specific answers yet or statements from the university, so we don't want to assume really what went on because we want to hear that from the first person sources themselves. But from our perspective, crazy, blown up, Good Morning America, it was that sort of thing. But as the day went on, I mean, I think people sort of forgot about that and focused on the basketball part of it.
Yeah, we are so lucky, to have such an incredible coach and organization that, something like that happens. It was a big media frenzy, but it was not something that affected the team. As you could see,
Right.
Auburn came out with the W. As we saw later on social media, Janai Howard and Jaheim Hudson both were positive on social media. We saw Janai was active, liking everything. Jaheim Hudson went on Janai Broom's live, stated that he was proud of the team. So hopefully this is just, a minor thing. I don't really think it's going to affect the team that much. We'll see what Bruce decides ahead of the next game against Kent State, how long these 2 will be out, but hopefully it was just a misunderstanding. No one really knows what happened. We're not going to speculate. We obviously have to touch on it because it was all over the media.
Too big to not.
On the Today Show. I mean, I had my grandpa texting me like, what's going on Auburn basketball? Like not something really crazy.
Yeah,
but,
right.
We're happy to see that, the team is still good. Obviously a couple of them were, the celebration after the game, that was going viral on Twitter too. A couple of the comments they made on Instagram Live was going viral on Twitter too. So hopefully they kind of just put this behind them. It didn't affect the game. We came out with the W, but we'll see what happens later on.
I think if anything, it fueled their fire a little bit.
100%. I texted you before. I was like, all right, this is either going to make Auburn absolutely dominate or this is going to affect the team chemistry. And we are so lucky it was domination over affecting the chemistry.
Yeah, definitely. It's a 2-sided sword there. And we were hoping the sword was on the sharp side when it came to the basketball game. And it sure was. First half, it was tight. Second half was tight. It was one of those games where every possession seemed to matter. And
100%.
One guy that made every possession matter was the guy who's made it matter for the longest time, for we can remember, for Auburn. Janai Broom had a fantastic game.
Oh, yeah, he most definitely did. This was one of my predictions. I said that Janai Broom was going to have a monster game. I thought that they were going to be able to shut down Miles Kelly, and that was something they did. Miles Kelly had that lucky 3 that went in, but every time he went to shoot a 3, there were defenders on him or it just didn't go in. So that was something that Houston came prepared with after watching that Vermont game. So I knew that, Janai Broom's an All-American. He's going to have monster games throughout the season. I just had such a weird feeling that this was the game that was going to be like the Janai Broom game. Granted, you're going to talk about a freshman in a little bit that kind of shocked the world and went viral, but Janai Broom was right there with him. This was his 28th straight game scoring in double digits. He had 20 points. 28 straight games. That is actually unreal. Second half, you knew when Janai Broom got the ball, he was making a bucket. The whole crowd knew it. Everyone watching knew it. Houston knew it. They, don't give Janai Broom the ball and we got Janai Broom the ball. So it was just absolute domination from the big man number 4. And it was so much fun to watch.
Yeah, it was cool to see in the first half too, when he didn't have his typical offense that he loves going over the right shoulder and scoring from the blocks. He didn't have the inside game going, tried to get it going from outside. But first half, it wasn't really the Janai Broom show yet. And even the first 5 minutes into the second half, it wasn't as well. They came out a little flat. That's when Houston sort of built their lead up to 7 and 9. But then Janai Broom got going. He took advantage of a tired Houston defense, got to the block, scored a couple of buckets. Then he started to get in rhythm, started dunking the ball. And that's when you realize that 4 was ready to go. And he was, and he really fired up the rest of the team, which was really, really cool to see. Another guy, though, that did the same thing was one of my predictions. He didn't have a great game against Vermont in the first game, wasn't able to make it in the points column in game 1, but he filled it up in game 2. That guy being Tahaad Pettiford, Agent Zero. He went to work yesterday against Houston, and they really had no answer for him from the start. Just his speed, his tenacity, his ability to play make. One play that stood out to me was the one he had the ball sort of on a fast break off a missed shot. They had numbers, and he was coming from the left side, went to the right side, and he's a lefty. But he swooped it under with the right hand. Just a pro move. He really showed why he's a 5-star. I mean, the guy had 21 points, was dishing it around 2, had 3 assists, really controlled the offense. And he replaced the shooting, like you said, of Miles Kelly. Hit 5 of 8 threes for 15 of his 21 points. Just a great game from Tahaad. He had 6 in the first half. 6 points in the first half. And I noticed something, though. He changed sneakers. If you... real hoopers know.
Notice this. Let me say that.
The real hoopers know when you go from the team shoes, he was rocking navy in the first half, switched to the red in the second half. It was blood in the water. Had a great second half, 15 in the second half. So maybe it was the shoes. What's Spike Lee say? You're a Knicks fan. It's got to be the shoes. It's got to be the shoes.
No, I love me some Spike Lee. The duo we just talked about, I mean, we talked about Tahaad, this mentorship between the freshman and Janai. And Tahaad and Janai came through the second half. They scored 19 of our points. In 24 minutes, which is all that Tahaad played, he had 0 turnovers, which turnovers were a problem in the Auburn game. And to have a freshman, we talked about him and Ja'Kai Howard last against Vermont. Maybe they had, the freshman jitters. Tahaad Pettiford most definitely did not have the freshman jitters in this game. No. Just having 0 turnovers in 24 minutes, scoring 21 points, 5 threes. It was just absolute domination. And to see, our leading scorer be a freshman, and right behind him was, our All-American. It's just really cool to see the dynamics of this team that, anyone can go off. Like we said, Miles Kelly went off last week. He had 5 points this game. Tahaad had 0 points last game, 21 points this game. Like, I think it's going to be a guessing game who's going to be our leading scorer every game. And that is so much fun.
Yeah, it's like Thanksgiving dinner, but instead of Thanksgiving, it's a roster, and dinner is whoever scores the most points. It could be a different thing. I mean, everybody likes something good on Thanksgiving. Everybody likes something different. I might like mac and cheese. You might like turkey. That's how it's going to be every single night. You get Janai Broom, you get Tahaad, you get Miles, you get Chad. You get all of these guys who are very, very capable of scoring in double-digit points and leading the team from night to night, which is, I think, going to make this season awfully exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be so much fun. Before I get into my next player, there's one thing I want to bring up about Janai. Something with free throws, Houston, and Janai Broom. Something about it. Janai Broom does not like making free throws against Houston. We praised him in our last episode how he was, 4 for 4 from the free throw line?
100%.
Last night, he was 0 for 4 from the free throw line. So obviously, his second half outshattered that. Hopefully we don't have to come back later in the season and kind of talk about this. Hopefully it was just, like I said, hopefully Janai Broom and Houston and free throws just don't get along. Hopefully,
right? Yeah,
Houston thing,
the rims,
sports madness. It's just, but it is something we just have to bring up that he was 0 for from the free throw line. So, But yeah, now we're gonna go to Cheney Johnson.
Let's do it.
I talked to him last week. He was a monster in the paint last week, according to Bruce Pearl. He was our leading scorer going into the second half. He had 9 points in the first half. Basically, almost all of them were in the paint. He was the only Tiger at the end of the game to have a double-double. He had 11 points, 10 rebounds. Talk about a guy just coming from a D2 school. I mean, the announcers were very, very heavy on him. Just seeing him come in and absolutely dominate. He was the spark we needed in the first half. You said we came out very flat. We did. Houston's defense was, I think our first possession, we had a shot clock violation. So we just everyone was a little nervous watching that. But then Cheney Johnson came in off the bench and just had himself a game and he proved himself. He put on, everyone's saying he put on weight this summer. Bruce Pearl said he looks completely different. He's like, who is this guy? And just showing, like I said last week, he's proving himself week in, week out.
Yeah, definitely is. And you can tell just the way his body is now. He's stronger. He's not afraid to drop a shoulder into somebody, because that mid-range game that he loves, you got to be physical to play it. And when he does it, it's a thing of beauty. And that's what he did in the first half. And his game, the way he carries himself is so, I guess, vanilla. It's very like flat. But his game really, really did the talking yesterday. If there was a name to put with the first half, it would be Cheney Johnson. He was leading on defense, by defensive rebounding, by getting in contested shots, and was also carrying the offense with getting the ball in the paint, getting in the mid-range, making shots for himself. Definitely an aspect that Auburn fans should look forward to, because Cheney, he came with some spunk yesterday, which was good. He came with some fire, which we love to see, especially because fans were really wanting to see him make that jump. I know that's something you touched on last episode as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. Everyone was, worried. I talked about this last week, losing the winningest player in Auburn's history, Jalen Williams. And everyone was wondering, is Cheney Johnson going to step up? And I think last night, just proving he was our leading scorer against the number 1 ranked Ken Palm team.
Yeah.
He is no longer a D2 player. He is I am Cheney Johnson, don't worry about anything in the media. This is who I am. I am coming in and I'm going to make an impact on this team. And last night, again, he proved himself again.
Yeah, certainly did. Filled up the box score, filled up the game, controlled tempo, really did what his role is and what Bruce has said he wants his role to be in this season. One guy, though, talking about box score.
Yeah.
If you look at the box score, you would think, okay, maybe this guy didn't have his best game. Maybe he didn't do all the things he needed to do. Maybe he didn't get that opportunity. But you're wrong. Dylan Cardwell, if you read the box score, he had 1 basket, 1 made field goal, 1 rebound, no blocks. He's a 7-foot guy. He's very good on defense. But the box score might fool you, because he was a key to this game. Simply put, his energy, but especially his defense. He had the one play he scored on, I think, really teed it off for him. Got the steal at the top of the key and basically took it like a 7-foot point guard, a Victor Wembanyama of sorts, up the court and scored on a tough layup. It was a move that we haven't seen Dylan make. He's improving, but I honestly think his greatest impact, especially on offense. On defense, we know what he can do. He's big. He can guard the perimeter, which is something we haven't said a lot of, or that hasn't been, I guess, really noted, or I guess lives up to the potential that it could be, because people don't think he can guard those guards, but he did yesterday. I thought he did a fantastic job of, when he got switched onto the perimeter, staying with those guards, especially when they drove or when they fled and pitched to the wings. He followed him. He played defense through and through. And at the rim, we know what Dylan Cardwell can do. He's tall. He can get up on the backboard. He can contest shots like nobody else can on the Auburn team. But on offense, it was the passing for me. And that's what stood out, too, in the Vermont game, is that inside out. When they get it to the middle, Dylan's the guy to facilitate. The one, Tahaad's first 3 from the left corner, when Dylan got that ball in the middle, and I think he had 1 foot on the ground, but had the wherewithal enough to throw it to Tahaad in the corner. That is a smart basketball player. And I know something that Fran Fraschilla noted in the broadcast.
We both wrote this down, too. So this is how much, we both literally we have this quote. Same exact
Yes, it totally stood out to me. He said, about Dylan Cardwell and his play just in the first 5 minutes. It came at the 15-minute mark of the game. He said, I love this kid. He will be in the NBA next year, and I don't care if he's a role player. He has a spot in that league just because of what you just saw. And they called him a certain thing that I know you noted too, about sticking with Bruce, sticking with this system. What was it?
They called him a culture warrior. He said he
love that
dies with Bruce Pearl, and that is so true. And that quote, both of us wrote it down, and it stuck with us, just knowing that he has such a massive impact in this game, on this team, on Bruce Pearl. Is just Dylan Cardwell. That's who he is.
Yeah, it's classic Jumbotron, man. And that culture warrior, it's so true, because the guy gives 110 all the time. And you can see whether he's playing bad, whether he's in foul trouble, which is something we saw some of last year. It doesn't matter. His momentum, his energy is always the same. Your next prediction, your next thought on the game, what we got?
So speaking of momentum and energy, I don't think anyone brings that more than Chad Baker-Mazara. We all
Very
know
true.
Very, very, very energy filled.
Mhm.
That wasn't the case in the first half, though. He had 0 points. And I said last week, he was the one that provided us that spark. He had those 5 points against Vermont that gave us, that drive to, dominate in that game. This happened to be because he was in foul trouble throughout the entire game. So we didn't really see the Chad Baker-Mazara that, we were expecting. My prediction was that he was going to have a dominant second half. And I'm not going to say he had a dominant second half, but he helped us massively in the second half. So Tahaad Pettiford makes a 3, and then you see Chad Baker-Mazara make that 3 right after Tahaad Pettiford. The jungle in Houston was going crazy. But then it was those clutch free throws. So that gave us a 3-point lead. So Auburn, I think, was leading 68-67. He gets fouled. And this is the time, there's 49 seconds left in the game. We could have a 3-point lead, which is massive.
Mhm.
He makes both of those free throws. And like I said before, free throws were a struggle for Janai Broom, who went 0 for 4. I think Cheney Johnson, I think he went 5 for 7.
5
I
for
think he
7.
missed 2 of those. So something that maybe, they might need to look on into, but not for Chad Baker-Mazara. When it came time to be, he made those clutch free throws. And I'm not remembering which game it was, but there was one game I think where Chad Baker-Mazara last year, I don't remember, you remember which game it was, where I think if he made free throws, we would have won the game. I'm thinking back to it. I think I'll bring it up maybe. And find it in a bit, but that is massive. There's a lot of pressure on you. Auburn is winning 68-67, 49 seconds left. You can make it a 3-point game. So he didn't have the dominant second half like I hoped, but he had a moment where it mattered and he made those 2 free throws.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason he was unable to get that momentum on offense, that reason that he usually has to go, was because he did get in foul trouble early. He had 2 quick fouls, I think, before the 16-minute mark in the first half, which sat him out. But he did play. He got in for little segments in that first half, which I was surprised about. When you see a guy get 2 fouls within a 4-minute span to open the game, he's likely sitting until the 2-3-minute mark of that first half. But Bruce was playing him at 12, at 8, at 6. He had him sort of sub in periodically. But that's something about Chad Baker that I think this game will teach him. I think he'll learn from this game, especially with what had happened on Friday night with Ja'Kai Howard and Jaheim Hudson out for this game. They didn't even travel with the team. You can't put your team in a position like that with fouls, with simple fouls like that. It's like they're very avoidable in that situation. And knowing that you're thin at that position, and with Miles Kelly in foul trouble, he had 4 at the end of the game. You can't put your team in a position like that. And I think Chad Baker learned that based off of his excitement at the end of the game. He wasn't because he's got the wingspan. We know that. He's 6'9" and can reach the moon if he wanted to. Sometimes that wingspan is a huge advantage. And yesterday against Houston, for the first half at least, it was a disadvantage because he was trying to get in on passes that maybe he couldn't have reached if he didn't have that wingspan. Playing into that, I think, a little too much. But the second half, he settled down and he really got it he got more composed. When he started putting the ball on the ground, good things started to happen. So yeah, definitely it was good to see Chad Baker, especially at the end of the game, come in clutch with those free throws because they needed it at the end of the game. I know Denver and Tahaad both sunk a couple too. So free throws, despite Janai obviously having his troubles, the team at the end of the game really sealed the game. And we've seen that go south so many times too, I feel like, Jojo, where it's like, just make your free throws, just make them, and we win the game. But yesterday, it was the piece that got us the win.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
Another piece that I think really, really helped Auburn yesterday was their pick and roll. And while on defense, it was very, very good because a lot of Houston's offense under Kelvin Sampson is that pick and roll, that east wing and west wing pick and roll. Auburn's offense on pick and roll was fantastic. And I think it was led primarily by Tahaad Pettiford and Janai Broom. When they were in it together, that was when Auburn was at their best, was when those two were in the pick and roll. And I got 3 plays quick to sort of demonstrate this pick and roll. The first one was at the 12-minute mark of the first half. They had a high pick and roll. Ball gets swung to the wing. CBN gets it, and he feeds it to the middle. And Cheney Johnson is so smart on this play, cuts from the corner down to the basket. Cardwell finds him. He doesn't get the bucket, but he does get to the free throw line where he converted 2 free throws. 5 minutes later, 7 minutes left in the first half. This play was one of my favorites, and they run it all the time. It's Tahaad to Janai Broom, that top of the key slip. It was great. And this play, Chad Baker-Mazara is completely used as a decoy. He acts like he's going away, but really he sets this stutter screen for Tahaad to come in, get the ball, and find Janai on the slip. He went and got the and one. That was a big play. To the second half now, 13:49 to play. It's almost this cool flex action that they run with Tahaad and Janai. They had Janai come set the ball screen. Tahaad, God, he's so smart. The patience, finds Janai, looks around, triple threat, goes right to the hoop, finishes with a big jam. 3 examples of Auburn basketball running the pick and roll to perfection. And with a defense like Houston has, that's not easy. That's not easy. And they made it look really, really good yesterday.
Yeah, no, that was so much fun to watch. Another thing that was really fun to watch, which is something that the announcers were constantly talking about, was Auburn with inbounds pass. They called it their special teams. They were like, Auburn, is a football school, so we're going to call it their special teams. And, they were right at this. They were like, no one makes it tougher to throw the ball inbounds than Auburn. And they had, this little special talking about their hand activity and foot movement. And it was so true. Just watching Houston try to throw the ball inbounds, Auburn was on them. Their defensive plays throughout this entire game, but specifically when Houston was trying to throw the ball inbounds, was so cool and so impressive to watch. And they were like, this is something that Kelvin Sampson is going to have to look at the team and say, this is something we need to practice. And Auburn did that to them. They're going to need to practice. Houston's going to need to practice that because of that. So that was really cool to watch.
Yeah, and against Vermont, they ran that same thing, and that led to turnovers and points. The difference between Vermont and Houston is pretty vast, granted. Houston, they did it against Houston, and instead of causing turnovers that gave them points, I think it just gave Houston frustration. Like, I feel like Houston just felt like they were bottled up, ready to explode. In the full court press that Bruce likes to run when they're throwing the ball in, and even in half court, like the amount of times Dylan 7-foot Cardwell is jumping in front of the ball with his hands up. God, you can't even see anything. You can't even see the stars when Dylan's in front of you jumping like that, much less getting the ball in. So that defense, I mean, it's crazy. I know you said it. I love that stuff. That's New York basketball right there. That's hard-nosed stuff, and that's what I love about this Auburn defense. It's just fun to watch.
Yeah, and I think because, like you said, Houston was like getting like so stressed out, like I think that's what let the defense get a little bit tired in the second half and let Janai Broom dominate. And that's
Amen.
because of Auburn on their special teams being able to come in and give so much pressure that Houston was like didn't know what to do, and then leads to Janai Broom having a 20-point game.
Yeah, exactly. And Houston, I mean, you can't sleep on Houston. That's a big point I wanted to make too. It's like, this isn't Vermont. Yes, they're a tournament team. They're a 1-seed level tournament team. They're very good. They bring back 4 or 5 starters from last year when they were that number 1 seed. And Miles Uzan and LJ Cryer are the real deal. While Auburn's defense did play very, very well yesterday, those 2 guys gave us some problems. And I think they showed some holes where Auburn can work on defense that help defense swinging left to right. Those guards made an impact. Granted, they are great shot makers. So it's not all on Auburn's defense. Sometimes you just gotta.
Yeah. When you watch Emmanuel Sharp make those threes, it kind of went, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Nothing you can do but like sit back and watch when a player is in a mode like that. But yeah, I mean, 4 or 5 starters returning is tough enough. But when they're as good as scorers as the Houston team right now are, that's tough to stop.
Yeah, and I think something that I want to bring up is both Auburn and Houston are picked to finish second in their conference. So that is just how dominant these teams are. Both have been to a Final Four in the last 5 years, both picked to finish second in their conference. Just absolute domination. Houston has beat Auburn 6 times in a row. Houston is 7-1 total over Auburn's history. Auburn has last won in 1962. So
Yeah.
Auburn's finally
It's been a
going to
while.
win in 2024.
Yeah, and I just thought yesterday how hard-nosed this game was. It was like every possession felt like it mattered. Like it would be something you look back on, you're like, oh, if Cheney had made that dunk, if Chris Moore had made that layup on that alley-oop from top, like those sort of moments, you're like, oh, that could cost us. One of those kind of games where the defense is so good, but so is the offense. And it's just like clashing and trying to score against those defense. It's like trying to wring water out of a dry towel. Like it's hard. You might get a drop or 2 and you got to take advantage of the drops you get. But this, I mean, certainly was a game for the ages. Like it's been one of my favorite Auburn basketball games to watch simply because it was just neck and neck the entire time.
100%. We were watching a March game in November.
Very much so.
What can you ask for that? And not only a March game in November where Auburn won.
Yeah.
Woo! Made it past the second round of the NCAA tournament. And how long? We lost to Yale last year, but like we were able to win against a Final Four. Like people were saying this could have even been like a championship caliber game. So the fact that Auburn was able to come out with the dub when their second game of the season is wow.
Yeah. And two, to check off the box that says first regular season non-conference win against a top 5 ranked opponent in school history with the schedule they have on them coming up, that has to be a huge relief for BP and company, because they have got a tough schedule of very highly ranked opponents. And it could even be the 2 and 3 teams, depending on how far we get in the Maui Invitational, but a lot of good teams on the come up here.
Yeah, this is something that we've talked about is, people don't need to freak out when we lose a game because of how hard our schedule is. But, we were able to beat the number 1 ranked KenPom team. Now we are ranked number 1 in KenPom, but just, we've got insane games ahead. We've got Ohio State, Purdue, Iowa State, the possibility to play UConn or North Carolina in Maui.
Wouldn't that be fun?
There's most likely we're not going to go undefeated in those games. But the fact that we were able to come out with this win against Houston just puts that confidence, puts that team chemistry, puts that Bruce Pearl is ready to coach this team. He knows he can. It was the first time they've won against, like you said, a non-conference top 10 win in program history. So it just shows that Bruce Pearl, the team, that they can do this no matter the hardness of their schedule. And I think that confidence is going to go a long way. Yeah,
I do too. And I saw a tweet yesterday that said, sometimes I feel like the college basketball season doesn't start until that tip-off classic with Michigan State, Duke, Kentucky, and Kansas. Well, if you were on your couch on Saturday and you watched the Houston-Auburn game, I think I could have just flipped your mind there, because that was it was such a high-level game. That was the kickoff to the season for me. Vermont was one thing, but this game, it was the real deal.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I don't know how you could say that college basketball hasn't started after watching that game. I think I kept going on Twitter, and every single basketball player personality was like, oh my goodness. Auburn is legit. Houston is legit. This was a game for the ages. And I don't think we can say that even more, because it truly was.
Yeah. And I wouldn't be shocked if it's a game that we see when St. Patrick's Day comes around, that sort of time. Yep. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw these teams battling out again down the road. Next for Auburn, though, they take on Kent State at home in Neville Arena on Wednesday night at 7:00. So that should be a good one. Kent State, Bruce didn't schedule a bad team this year. So Kent State, I think it'll be similar to Vermont. It's going to be a team they have to prepare for, but it's a team that I'm at least confident that they can go in and beat. What are you looking forward to in that one?
I agree. I'm looking forward to the resurgence of Miles Kelly. I think Houston was able to lock him up. He was in foul trouble. And I think back in the jungle, I'm hoping we can see him shoot lights out from the 3 again. I'm also looking forward to seeing JP Pegues and Denver Jones kind of make an impact. Last night, they were a little bit quiet. Like we said, Pettiford and Broome had those games, but I'm hoping those guys from the 1 and 2 hopefully can come out and just perform. I'm hoping those 3 guys, can have a big game. But specifically, I want the resurgence of Miles Kelly back.
I'm about it. You're trying to see 3-pointers. Yeah.
I love it. I'll be there again, and I want to hear that jungle roar. It was like an earthquake last time. Hearing the jungle roar, there's nothing like it. And it's so fun. I think Miles Kelly brought that last time. So
yeah, I'm hoping it's another great Auburn game. I know the fans will be there. The fans will be back, especially after this weekend. I think the energy is going to be high. So it'll be a fun one, but we've got a whole season left to go of Auburn basketball coverage. I'm ready for the ups. I'm ready for the downs. I'm ready for it all, because if anything, last night was a great teller. This season is going to be a fun one.
Oh, it's going to be so much fun, Vince. We are so lucky to cover this team. I keep saying that. I'm going to say it over and over again. This team is going to be so much fun to cover.
No doubt about it. And if you're interested in following Auburn all season long, this is the spot for it. So make sure you follow us on YouTube, Instagram, follow us both on Twitter. Our links will be in the description of this video. And make sure you stay tuned for our Kent State recap and whatever player interviews we've got coming up. We've got it all lined up and ready to rock and roll. Jojo, you got anything else?
Nope. Just make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
Boom. That's what we do. This is Straight Out the Jungle. My name is Vince Wolfram.
I'm Jojo Cavanagh. Thanks for watching. We will see you next week for Kent State.
War Eagle.
War Eagle.